I'm going to be talking about human trafficking in Canada in this video. I'm going to talk about the structure of organizations affiliated with this, as well as their ties, and a little bit about their history. In different videos in future, I will be covering the grounds of caseworkers, your rights, and what you can do to combat this issue and solve the problem and protect our children. So, the mission statement of the Children's Aid Foundation of Canada is they're saying they're the leading charity dedicated to improving the lives of children and youth in the child welfare system. I'm going to show you why that's not the case. So, there are 74 of these organizations all across the province and country. And the Children's Aid Foundation of Canada's founding partners is the Children's Aid Society of Toronto, which enables them to operate as a foundation. So essentially, Children's Aid Foundation of Canada and CAS Toronto are at the top of the pyramid in their structure of hierarchy with organizations attached to them. And they rely on grants and their partners for funding. There are other means in which they rely on funding because there are financial incentives for putting children through the system, which will be covered further in different videos in future. And CAS is the largest board governed child welfare agency in North America. Now, Paul Rosebush is the CEO of CAS Toronto, and Valerie McMurtry is the CEO of Children's Aid Foundation of Canada. So this is a list of different supporters, grants, and that sort of a thing between April 1st, 2019 and March 31st, 2020. So in that time period, somewhere between 25 and just under 50 grand, we have the BlackRock Fund of Tides Foundation. Anybody who's seen any of my previous videos, Tides Foundation is George Soros' money gateway into North America, and BlackRock is one of, if not the largest investment firms in the world, and almost every corporation in existence, if you go on Yahoo Finance and Google any one of them, and you go under the shareholders section, you'll always see BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Pretty much own everything. These are some of the partnering agencies in current continuity, as this document is from August 2021. And you could see the various CAS organizations in different municipalities, as well as adoption services and that sort of a thing, which extends to the Indigenous community as well. So a little look at the leadership team. We have Valerie McMurtry, who I pointed out earlier as the President CEO of Children's Aid Foundation of Canada. And this is a look at some of the board chair. Now, through the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies, child welfare in Ontario is governed by the legislative framework of the Child, Youth and Family Services Act, which is administered by the Government of Ontario. So, I will have a look at this act in future videos, which will cover the very large grounds that caseworkers have and the vast powers they have, which are ridiculous, by the way. And the role of the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services is to fund and monitor children's aid societies, develop policy to support the provincial child welfare program, and license children's group homes and foster homes, licensing them. So that seems like there is financial incentive to put somebody through these homes if they're licensed. We'll get to that as well in future videos. So the board of directors for the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies is composed of directors elected at the annual meeting of the membership. And here's a list of some of the members. And now they developed a strategic plan, in 2018, and it has the direction for the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Services and the Child Welfare sector until 2023. And in developing the plan, they undertook extensive stakeholder engagement. Now, the stakeholders are basically generally the people on the chair or people that have the actual influence in terms of actions taken. And this is the type of language used in a lot of UN documents, and other corporations tend to have the same type of language used within their company mandates, and you see that on Rockefeller Foundation documents and that kind of a thing. So the plan describes where children, youth, families, and communities want children's services systems to go, and outlines the strategies they'll use to get there. So realistically, children, youth, and families and communities don't really have much say in what actually goes on, and I'm going to show that to you in their document that they have. So under corporate governance here, basically, the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Society Board of Directors represents this ownership and makes decisions reflecting the interests of the association's membership and carrying out its mission statement. So it's about the interests of the association's membership only, and the Board of Directors, what they do is they govern the association, engaging in strategic processes designed to support the development of an effective child welfare sector across Ontario, and the board uses decision-making framework created to enable member agencies to speak as a sector with a unified voice on issues affecting members of children, youth, and families across Ontario. Decisions are made on recommendations from specific strategic councils, Indigenous Forum, Governor's Council, or Executive Leadership Section, depending on the relevance of the issuing governing body. So essentially what this is saying is that for any inclusive member societies, it's only talking about any of these groups that I literally just mentioned 2 seconds ago. So if I have to paraphrase George Carlin to put this very simply, it's a big club and you ain't in it. So a little bit about the history here. In 1874, charitable institutions were permitted by legislation to intervene to prevent the maltreatment of apprenticed children, and a cost-sharing relationship was established between charitable organizations and the province. Now, in 1888, an act for the protection and reformation of neglected children allowed the courts to make children wards of institutions and charitable organizations, with local government assuming the maintenance costs of wards. Now, foster homes are now encouraged as alternatives to institutions, and with the new legislation in place, this famous guy right here, J.J. Kelso, he helped found CAS Toronto in 1891 and went on to advocate for the passage of a new act for the prevention of cruelty and, a new act for the prevention of cruelty to and better protection of children in 1893. Now, with this legislation, children's aid societies became, in 1893, semi-public agencies with the legal power to remove children from their homes. They have the power to remove children from their homes, supervise and manage children in municipal shelters, quote unquote, and collect monies from municipalities to cover the maintenance costs for wards. Now, societies at the time gained the status and prerogative of legal guardians. In 1891, between 1891 and 1912, 60 different CAS organizations sprung up across Ontario, and in 1912, they joined together as the Associated Children's Aid Societies of Ontario, now known as Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies. And there was a giant shift when basically there were constant reformations of acts and new acts passed between those years until present day, essentially. And with these several trends, what happened was there was a shift from volunteer to a professional service system, the provincial government's acceptance of direct responsibility for the delivery of child welfare services through public financing, agency reporting, and provincial supervision, and a shift from institutional and protection-oriented services to non-institutional and prevention-oriented services. Now, shifting from voluntary charity into professional organization is what doomed the CAS. Now, the actions of CAS reflect many motivations beyond simply helping children and families. The organization and individual workers must maintain child protection statistics to justify their salaries, bloated budgets funded with public money, and their claimed aspiration to prevent harm which might befall a child. So there is financial incentive to put children through the system is basically the grand point of this. Now, here's a little bit about their funding, right? Is every year, the Ontario legislature, in common with many other jurisdictions throughout the Western world, appropriates money for the protection of children. Some reasons are that legislators may have the same naive view as others not involved with social services, that appropriating money for the protection of children does what it says. And the social services industry that lives on the appropriations is well aware that it exists only on account of political benefits, right? However, consequently, they are inclined to political activity and lobbying to get appropriations increased. Parents who believe children are theirs by natural right don't see any reason to lobby. Those are parents that are naive about how the system actually works. Now, the social service bureaucracy can threaten elected officials if basically a cabinet member is to decline providing funding or services for corresponding industry or legislation that CAS is supporting. What happens is they have the power to threaten somebody via blackmail, threaten a politician via blackmail through branding them a defender of child abusers if they're not, giving grants or something like that. So CAS has a lot of power over politicians, and they basically are in the judge's pocket because all crime is essentially commercial. I don't care what anybody says. Everything through the legal system is commercial, as legal means contract. So in child protection, the funded agencies identify themselves in need of protection, take them into what they euphemistically call care, and fight any legal battles necessary to sever the connection with the parents. Children may be adopted or kept in foster care indefinitely. The largest single item of expense is usually foster care. And so I'm going to talk about the law of reversal and language, essentially, that they use. Kidnapping a child, they use the term apprehension. The plaintiff is the applicant, and the accused family is the respondent. The institutions of forcible confinement, they call care. A contractor who houses a child for money is a foster parent. Parents and foster parents alike are caregivers. permanent legal separation between parent and child is known as crown wardship. So that about concludes the video here for now. I'm sorry there is not really meaningful advice in terms of what to do in a legal sense or what your rights are, but this is such a vast subject I cannot possibly do this in one video, but there will be more to follow up, and I hope that we can prevent human trafficking, especially that of children, in Canada. Thank you very much for your support.